All right, guys, welcome back to Marlins 9. I'm your host, Jeremiah Geiger. State of the Marlins, Part 3 with Joe Frisaro. Joe, welcome back to the show.
Jeremiah, thanks for having me on. I guess we're going to do our monthly state of. So honored to be back for month number three. We're pretty much at the All-Star break, and which signifies the halfway point. Although in terms of games, it's certainly a little bit past the halfway point, but it kind of gives you a measure of where things stand. And unfortunately, every month we've been doing this, there hasn't really been many strides forward, and we'll dive into it, and we'll offer some opinions and get this try to be as constructive as well as critical in this one as possible.
Yeah, the Marlins sitting at 32 and 58, certainly out of the realm of the postseason by any stretch of imagination. This team is terrible. This team is just having a real bad season. Not just on the field, but there's a lot of debate within the organization, within the fan base. Is the front office in place with Skip Schumacher on his way out probably after this season? It's tough, but it's good to have you on to dissect it and discuss it. And I know you wanted to mention the hockey team in South Florida, the Florida Panthers, who won their first Stanley Cup. How can you tie that into with the Marlins here?
Yeah, Jeremiah, after watching the Panthers celebrate, and I know everyone in South Florida is that even spent any time following this team, and I'm sure there's a lot of bandwagoners that did, but
Yeah.
but still, if you got excited for Game 7 and saw how they beat the Edmonton Oilers, and then saw the aftermath and saw that team celebrate and all the bonding that went in and all the grind and the commitment to win it all, it got me thinking, about the team that we're talking about today. And this is how I want to tie it in because um, there was a word said in the aftermath that the TV announcers, I think it was TNT or whatever was doing at ESPN, I can't remember which were the broadcasters, but they kind of noted as they're pretty much presenting the cup to the Panthers, and they're doing the handshake, and everyone's going nuts. They're on the ice, and they kept talking about this group of Panthers, until finally one of the announcers, I forget who, noted, "Wait, let's stop. This is not a group. This is a team. This is the definition of team." And it struck me because they further said a team that all played as one, that held each other accountable, that all pulled, the rope from the same side, all the cliches you want to use. But anyone that's ever been in a team environment understands that that's why team championships are so rewarding, is because there's a sense of we did it together.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Fortunately, with the Marlins, there's no team core all the way to we don't even know who the manager is going to be. Is it going to be Skip next year? Is he going to come back? The assumption is no. Part of me, the longtime journalist in me, I'm not completely writing it off until it's no, because to me, if Skip's still here after the trade deadline and they're 30 under or whatever the number might be, then I wouldn't necessarily rule out that he's kind of buying into at least discussing with them whether he wants to come back. But that aside, where is the form? Where are they trying to form a team when they are really committed to everybody's for sale? We don't really have the necessary parts to win. And to be honest, Jeremiah, this team, and for too long, and even last year to an extent, even though last year was more of an epitome of a team, was that it almost seems like a fantasy team,
Yeah.
because we don't care if they win or lose. If our chosen few players we really like are having good years, we might be winning our fantasy league, or having a good, making a little money betting on them or whatever. But for a baseball fan, for a South Florida baseball fan that wants this franchise to succeed, it's winning as a team. It's winning with the parts that fit together, the parts that hold each other accountable, that the parts that do what it takes over the course of a game to win that game. Whether it's, picking a player up, a guy makes an error behind you, does the pitcher get the next guy out? Or does that just unravel everything? Because errors happen. It's a sport of failure. And that concept, apparently the Panthers really brought that home. That they all worked hard. They all, gave it all they got. They all fit together. And that's the challenge of Peter Bendix, is finding the fitting parts, not finding the parts that, oh, well, Tanner Scott's having a great year. Rest of the bullpen's not, but we got our all-stars, so we'll just yell at all those who aren't getting it done, and praise Tanner Scott till he gets traded. But even then, the all-star representative is a free agent next year, who by all I only hesitate to say he won't be traded, because I don't trust that Peter Bendix can execute a trade, because he should have moved Luzardo way before he got hurt. He should have moved all these. He probably should have moved Scott a month ago. But they've used him in multiple innings, which I don't know why Skip does that, which is unheard of when you're this far out, while you're going 5-out saves, 2 inning saves, with the guy who's a top 5 reliever, as they're saying. But again, my little rant there. But for the Marlins to become a real serious contender, first they got to be a team. They got to, who are these pieces that are going to get you there? And how much are we lowering our standard here? My question to fanbase: what is a happy season? Were they so bad for so long that being a 75-win team happy? I've had people tell me that my last year or so on the beat. People were like, because they're losing 90 at a regular pace. Oh, we'd be happy to lose 84. Oh, to win 75, 78 games, just to not be that bad. And I'm like, that's not how it works.
Right.
Because in team sports, if you're, to me, covering a team, I'm going to report on how they're building to be a championship team, not just, oh, well, isn't this great? We're somewhat entertaining, and people will come and see us play. But, you want to go for the championship. That's what the goal is, to build towards a championship. And you do that as a team with all the parts you need, the depth you need, the commitment and that team aspect goes from the ownership to the front office, to the coaching staff, down to the players, down to all the people that work on the staff, that go down to the bat boy or whoever. And it just, you kind of, when you win it, that's why everyone goes nuts when you win it, because it took all of you to win it. And we get no sense, we get no comments from the front office or ownership that there's a commitment to team to win something.
Well, that's the goal, right? It should be the goal for every fan, for every person that cares about baseball and has a favorite team. Their goal should be watch their team win a World Series. I mean, I don't know why watch the sport, why be a fan of the sport, be a fan of a team more specifically, if you don't care about winning. And to me, that is the biggest question that I have for these fans who are so complacent and who are so okay with losing, but not just the losing, the questioning the why behind it. Questioning decision making. I don't see that enough. I don't see people question the methods and take a look at the Luis Arias trade. Like, take a look that he was hurt. I know I'm not gonna, sound the record off again on this, because I've talked about this enough with Luis Arias, but when they traded for Dylan Head and Head was injured, they knew Head was injured because he was out for the last 2 games, and they made the trade anyway. And now he's out for the season. Do you realize how bad that is? How bad a look that is on the front office within the first 3 months of the season? But these fans, I've had interactions, Joe, on Twitter where, let's take Jazz Chisholm, for example. Okay. Jazz Chisholm Jr. is an infielder his whole life. Grows up playing the infield, comes up through the minor leagues in the infield, second base, shortstop. The Marlins last season say, we're going to put you at center field. You've never played this position before. He shows the talent there. I've seen the talent there watching him play. Sure, he's not perfect. Okay. But that doesn't mean he can't develop and grow into a position. But you have these people go, oh, negative 15 defensive runs saved. Take him out. He's terrible. Now the experiment's over. And I'm sitting here first off, that's one advanced metric. You can use outs above average, and that's another advanced metric. And then I get criticized. Oh, go to Duffy's and hang out with your Moneyball, old time scouts. And I'm like, why can't you just be respectful? Why can't you understand
those Moneyball old time scouts? aren't 28 games under with this method,
Right.
and a
Right.
lot of them have won.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, the state of the Marlins right now, again, it's you're 28 games under 500, 20. I mean,
Or
half.
26, I think, technically here on Tuesday because they beat the mighty White Sox. Needed to go
Yeah,
to bottom of the ninth to do it, against the team that's complete garbage. But hey, they pulled it out and gave the
yeah.
stink bowl. Yeah,
But and then Skip, I kind of wanted to mention him because at this point with Skip Schumacher, you got to think about it from his perspective as a manager, as a competitor. You go from last season, your first season managing a big league club. You take this team to the playoffs, you push the right buttons, and then Kim Eng, who had enough trust in you and faith in you to hire you, was let go. And now you're sitting there with a new front office, completely different philosophy, with no commitment to you and no commitment to winning. And every day you have to go out and be the ultimate professional, you know?
yeah,
So I give a lot of credit to Skip in this year, a lot of credit.
yeah. That's where the team aspect. I'm sure if Skip were to come back, would only be because the personal bonds he's made with the players who are fighting for him. That
Right.
that that's kind of the clubhouse dynamic, the team dynamic of, look, I got your back. You're my guy. I hope everyone could see my shirt, because I intentionally wore this, and it says simply, "Life's too short to take fastballs down the middle." So I wore this on purpose today for this podcast because it kind of speaks to what we're talking about. You had an opportunity this year, meaning the Marlins, with coming off a playoff year, granted a flawed team in a completely flawed league, as we see more and more, with many teams just a couple of games over and some 6, 7 under. Look at the Cubs, where they get counsel for that contract that they paid the manager to be 8 to 10 under or whatever. But I'm sure they think they're kind of in it. And why I was banging the drum to bring back Soler over anyone else, because some people want Adam Duvall. Look at him. Hit like 190 with like 8 homers or whatever. I think Soler hit like 280, by the way, with like 6 homers in June, but they'll all mention the bad April and May, and forget that. This is why you measure players over a season. Because guys with track records, it's over a season. It's not over your snarky tweet that in 2 weeks he was over 10, and you could say, everybody in baseball is better than him. It's Soler was part of a team where the dynamic of Luis Arias hitting first and Jorge Soler hitting second worked. It
Yeah, it
worked
worked for the
because the
Marlins.
rest of the lineup fell in. And yes, we could say Jake Burger's had a down year, and good for Jake to hit the walk-off. It must have felt great for him because it hasn't been a great year. And for Bell, who made the final out in several games to get a little bit of a break and on that long ball to win the game on Sunday. But those guys all were better because Soler and Arise were in the lineup. Instead, they took Soler out and just said a full year of Bell and a full year of Burger will more than equal. Jake Burger, it's hard to be a perennial 30 homer guy in the big leagues. He did it last year, but things went right for him.
Mhm.
Things go, sometimes you're a little, you got an oblique or whatever, you're a little off. That's why your year's down. Arise's knees aren't as great as they were. So he's at first this year. Doesn't mean he's not going to be a really productive. And when you talk about, for all the people that want to say Luis Ariz is sucky and whatever, because he's only hitting 312 or whatever now, all I know is the other day I'm watching the Padres play. I think it was the Cardinals, and they're losing 4-3 in like the seventh inning, something like that. And Ariz was 0 for 3, tying run on second, blisters a line drive, single in the left field, 4-4, and they end up Padres winning 6-4. In the ninth inning, he had one more at bat. I think he rolled one over to second baseman. So Luis Ariz went 1 for 5. Batting average went down a little bit. I know RBIs don't matter, but Luis Ariz helped that team win that game. And I don't know how WAR calculates stuff like that, but Luis Ariz right now is not playing to hit 350 for selfish reasons or win another batting title. He's playing on a team trying to get to the postseason. And they're
Yeah.
3 or 4 games over. So his numbers now will be in the context of the team around him. You know, Manny Machado got off to a very slow start. He's starting to pick it up. They're without Tatis now. Profile, all these things are the Padres don't really care what each guy's numbers are doing. Marlin fans care more, so they could throw their little snarky, tweets and say, Otto Lopez, who hasn't proven even health now, is the answer at second base. And that's the point. It's like when you're playing for something, your numbers don't matter as much as the bottom line. Did you do enough to win that game? Did you win that game today? And maybe my job was to get a guy over. Maybe my job was to just get that run in. And where's the sense of purpose? There's no urgency on the Marlins. There's urgency for what? And I look at Vidal Brujan, I look at Nick Gordon, I look at Xavier Edwards, Berger, Bell. I look in the faces of these players, and you can see they're trying super hard. They want to win, and they want to win. They want to be big leaguers. They all want to establish that, and you see the hurt when they're losing. Jesus Sanchez sometimes. I'm joking. I think Sanchez offers value, but he's kind of up and down, like a free, fun-loving guy. I do like him a lot, but those guys are going to get, beaten into the ground. Whether or not these guys are part of anything going forward, what are they playing for? They're all playing to probably get moved. They're probably playing, and then some are probably playing to, see if they could play here a little bit, but there isn't a guy on this 25-man, at least position player, I could sit around and say definitively when they're ready to win. And I'm talking about win, not just maybe in 2 years if some young pitching, they catch lightning in a bottle and have a year similar to 23 and they win 83 games and it's another year, a stinky year for the NL, and you get the the third wild card to sixth playoff spot and you get bounced in 2 games. I don't see anyone that's really part of anything.
And upcoming this Sunday, we have the draft, and that's
Yep.
the next big step for the Marlins to, I mean, if you really think about it, if they miss on this draft, because it's not going to just be the first round, they don't have another pick until, I believe, somewhere in the 50s after their first round pick. I think it's pick number 16 and then 50 something. Like, you got to hit your first round, and then you got to find some more talent.
And what are you picking, 16th-ish?
Exactly. So the
Yeah,
talent pool is
I
already limited.
fully anticipate them going college the whole way. And I think
I
that's
hope they
kind of
do.
how they're going to be. Because I think that they're going to, first of all, the model is going to do the draft. Everyone talks about Frankie,
Right.
and he's going to the model's going to do the draft, and Peter Bendix is going to do the draft, or Gabe Kapler. But the model, and I can tell you this: I was in Arizona for a week a couple of weeks ago, and I was there when the combine was going on. I spent a couple of days there, and I saw one or so people from the Marlins. I don't recognize too many people anymore there, but I tell you this because I was working on the level where the suites were. And I get
Mhm.
off the elevator, and all these teams had suites. I'm not even sure if the Marlins had a suite. They might have just had a couple of tables in the, or sit in the floor. There are people because it might cost money to send people there. But the first coming off the elevator, the suite right in front of you when you're walking out of the elevator was the Oakland Athletics.
Mhm.
Or Las Vegas, or whatever they are, Sacramento,
Sacramento, yeah.
whatever they're going to be. But the door was open, and there must have been like 40 people in that room. They had like everyone in the organization for Oakland was there. Now, maybe the Marlins hired a bunch of people, but they might have 2, 3. I don't know. I don't think they had as big a contingent. Point being, the combine was a great chance to interview players. To obviously, you'll see a few of the things they do on the field. Everyone's got video, and they probably the area scouts and cross checkers and such had probably seen everybody, that they kind of know what they want. But I just have a feeling that they're gonna just let the colleges be their minor league development, and then get these guys who come out of a model. But I will say this, as I was just doing some stuff for a high school site I work for, Scorebook Live, SB Live. I did the top 50 prep players because I'm more focused on that. And there's a lot. I know they need bats, but
A lot of them.
there's a lot of arms in this draft. Now that typically they go in the first couple of rounds, you might get some, but there's a lot of like 6'5", 6'6" projectable lefties throwing 95 to 98. And where they're picking, if the bat isn't going to be elite, now you don't have to do every pick the same. I'm almost, unless they really have a conviction on a bat, and I can't really say who it would be. I know, and then I know there's catchers out there too, but is that catcher going to be sure enough bet for the 16th pick? I don't know. I'm not really a draft. I didn't dive in as a draft guru, so I don't want to mislead people in this one. But if you're already going to need pitching because your pitching's broken anyway, you think you have a lot of it. But if you're hanging hopes on a Noble Meyer and was it Thomas White and
Mhm.
maybe you bring in another arm in the first round, and Elise can have three. And if Yuri's still part of your plans, if you haven't moved him by then, maybe you could go that route. Because if nothing else, pitching keeps you in games. So that's just I'm throwing out there as a possibility. But everyone reads the mock drafts; they can see the names. But it probably is going to be a college bat. But I don't know. Again, with this group, I think whatever the model tells them to pick, they'll pick.
I want them to get a college bat just because I think that's the quickest way you could potentially get a player in your lineup faster. Like like the development for I mean, okay, this is assuming you don't draft a Jacob Berry. Thank God. I hope that doesn't happen. We all saw Brooks Lee making his major league debut with the Twins and what should have been. But there, if he slips down to you at 16, the guy from Tennessee, that second baseman, um, Christian Moore, like that is a developed approach. It's not just all about, well, you said the model. They're going to look at the spreadsheet, and they're going to be, oh, what's his, X deep debut OBA and his exit velocity on a slider 2 feet out
Yeah,
the zone. I'm like, why don't you watch the guy hit? Look at those. That's
yeah. That's all
fine.
they do
Look
is
at
they
those.
look at iPads. They don't look at players.
But
I'm there looking at
watch
players.
how a guy competes. Watch how he takes a strikeout and the emotions behind it, the competitiveness. Look at the advanced analytics. That's fine, but take into consideration and incorporate the eye test. That's the biggest thing with analytics, I think. And I want to spend a couple minutes talking about this. And my rant on analytics has been, if you are going to say you're a smart guy, you're the smartest guy in the room, look at me, I know more than you have to realize that these other fans, these other people may understand what this stat is. It's available for everybody. You go to
Yeah,
Fangraphs, go to StatCast, understand what it is, but you are only picking your stats to fit your supposed narrative. That's what these fans do. This is what the front offices. I don't really know how you can have an advantage because unless you're looking at spin rate and stuff like that, all these advanced stats, they're available for every team to see. Every
yeah.
team can see what player has what expected stat. And I did a long tweet just the other day because somebody was tweeting out and making fun of some anti-analytical guy because of an expected weighted on base average or something. And I said, look at Nolan Arenado. According to this stat, he's gonna overperform that expected stat every single season of his career. Nolan Arenado is on track for the Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? Like, players' profiles in baseball in particular are so different from each other. That's why you have an all-star in Luis Arias, and his profile as a hitter is so much different from, let's say Kyle Schwarber. Okay. But they
Yeah.
each provide value, and then
Yeah.
together they mesh into a team, like you were saying. And that's what's the goal is to build a team and find the right pieces to win a championship.
No,
You
not down
can't.
here. Down here, it's to say "I told you so," or your buddies in the minor leagues, so you're pushing for him,
Right.
or your buddy is on the team and he tells you stuff, so you're pushing for him. That's how this is all presented. oh, I want Skip on my podcast, so I'm going to say nice things. It's like that's why I like where I am right now because I don't give a damn. I'm just
Right.
calling. I care about the fans, I care about the product, and I care about the future of a franchise that I am more invested in than all these people. Trust me. And it's like, and I'm not. I don't have an agenda.
Yeah.
Agenda to take down the Marlins. My agenda is to build up the Marlins, but I'm not going to sit around and let them destroy 5 years with, oh, trust us. You didn't give Kim any rope, but Peter gets all the rope. He gets all the benefit of the doubt. Meanwhile, I mean, think about it. You took a team that was in the playoffs, and this is a garbage team right now. I mean, this is a
They're
100
terrible.
loss team. So even what does next year look like? You know, I'm
At
sorry,
least
but
90 losses.
Tommy John surgeries are 14 to 16 months. They're acting like Uri will be back for opening day, or oh, maybe just April. Then he'll be ready to roll.
And then have a
Why?
full load of
Yeah,
work.
why?
Yeah.
Why?
There's no point.
Because we want to break him again, put another fake finger on him when he's got a broken nail.
Right.
You know, pitch Luzardo with a bad back when his velo's at 90, and let him keep running him out there, and then wonder why he's on the IL.
That was
And
atrocious.
it's like they've done so much mismanaging of it. And this is I'm going to mention this to you too. I mentioned this on my podcast that I did for Real Voices of the Game. Studying where the NILs are right now. And the Marlins better be really careful. And not just the Marlins, but a lot of baseball teams. If you're a bad friend, if you're Chicago White Sox and you're going to pick, let's say the White Sox pick one next year and the Marlins pick two. And you got Ethan Holiday, who's going to be the next great thing, right? Just like his brother and his dad and such. The Marlins aren't paying anyone in player development. I mean, and I'm not taking shots
Mm.
at anybody for where they worked or whatever, but people I'm seeing on Twitter or LinkedIn are like, hey, I'm some D3 coach and I got hired by the Marlins to work in player development. And that's all well and good. You don't have to, you can get to the big leagues at any level. You could be NAIA, it doesn't matter. But they're not getting D1 coaches. They're certainly not getting coaches from, they're not rating the Dodgers, taking their three or four, their lieutenants over here and paying them. They're not, the Rays don't let you poach the Rays. So all this Bendix is bringing the Rays way. He doesn't have Rays people. The Rays don't allow you to poach their people. So he comes over, and maybe when their contract's up, if they want to come over here, which you wonder why. So if you're getting a player who's who's one high school kid, and you could be like Holiday, who knows everything about the big leagues because his dad and his brother and the family, and your uncle's the coach at Oklahoma State. You get an NIL deal for now. I get it. It's a ballsy move to say no to a $10 million, slot for the 1-1. But I would look. You almost pull an Eli Manning
Mm-hmm.
and say, I don't really want to go to those two organizations.
Right.
I don't
Wait
really
3
like what
years.
they got. I'll wait a couple of years and
Yeah.
I can make, and just, I don't know if anybody knows the name Dia Bell in the audience. Dia Bell is the quarterback. It's a junior quarterback at American Heritage High School here in Plantation, Florida. A great kid who's going to be a junior. He's already committed to Texas and he's got an NIL deal lined up for about $9 million.
Wow.
So big league teams, you don't have the leverage you thought you did. Because you could go to college, and that's the other thing. You could be the 16th pick, and you could be a college or junior, let's say, and you don't like what you see or hearing from the Marlins. You could be a pitcher, and you can see why they breaking over there. They got all of them throwing, 60%, slider group pitches like sweepers and splitters, and I'm going to blow my arm out, with drive line there.
Could you
No,
imagine?
I think I'm just maybe I can wait another year. I'll stay another year, get my NIL money, and hope that. Or I mean, it goes on anyway. Signability is already an issue because you could be 1-1, and let's say your bonus pool is 15 million or 16 million at 1-1, and 10 million is number one pick. You can demand it all, or just tell them, do not draft me because I will make it so hard to sign.
Can you imagine if that
Now,
happens to the Marlins?
I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, that
That
would be a
you
nightmare.
better wake up. And it's not just the Marlins, it's a lot of these teams
Yeah,
because these players now are going to use their leverage because you could be a high school superstar and you could go to Florida the first year and not, make the money there, and they didn't go far enough in the College World Series for you, so I'm going to transfer to Georgia, and then because they're giving you more, and then Tennessee's giving you more, and I could win titles there and pull up 5 million each at each one. I can make 15 million and kind of be developed, be closer to big league ready instead of going right to the minors with D3 coaches and iPads telling me what to do. Or I could do that and play, and not have to take buses and play at noon in the backfields and these, you know, oh, rained out again. Oh, it's Florida at this day. Oh, it's 109 with the heat index, or you do out in Arizona or whatever at these places. And you could say no, because a college baseball player right now is much more leverage than a professional minor leaguer. So they could be a free
100%.
agent every year. You with the portal and NILs, you could be a free agent every year.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to think too. Like, let's just say they go college bat. I think it's probably a certainty they go college bat in the first round. Your second and third round, if you're the Marlins, you say, okay, well, we still need to input more talent offensively into the system. So we're going to go a high school bat, maybe another college bat. And then those guys take a look at the Marlin system, look at the draft from a year ago, guys hitting 197, 202 in low A
Yeah.
Jupiter. And then they say, man,
What are they doing there?
I don't think so. I'm not going to
Yeah,
sign. I mean, that's a real possibility. Like it's
correct.
something that they have to take into consideration that, and you mentioned the coaching, and that's kind of what everybody says player development, right? Everybody likes to hop on the trend player development. Well, who are these guys working with in the cage? Who are these guys hitting with? How are they adjusting their swing to hit a curveball? Where are they learning the little nuanced part of the game that make a great ball
Well,
player? That's what you have to look for. Who's coaching
yeah,
your
and
guys?
I can tell you this, and it's not just the Marlins, but and the Marlins certainly are doing it. The more experienced hitting coach that could be out there who's 45 to 50 years old
Yeah.
and maybe has won some titles and been on playoff teams, they're not hiring them because they're a threat to them. So
Mm,
you're getting the people who are it's like politics. You get power and you don't want to relinquish it, and you might sound around yourself with people who aren't very good, but you get there, but you're right in that data cult. So get everyone who thinks like me. No one's going to dissent. Everyone's going to walk right in line. But it does matter, and I could see players. It's going to happen, and it be interesting when it will happen. But it will happen that there will be a Eli Manning type that either that or they sit around and go, um, "Yeah, I'll go in the draft, and if you take me, I'll do like Bo Jackson did with when he did with the Buccaneers, and he said he would go play baseball. John Elway did, and he went and played baseball. Now, not everyone has that option, but there could be players that sign ability. So what happens then? And the Marlins did this in my heyday covering them because they were cheap. Made no bones about it. With the 15 pick, they'd take third rounders, basically third round talent, and hope they would, because they didn't want to pay
the
whatever.
top
They didn't even
dollar.
really fully have the slot. They didn't want to pay like 2 million to anyone in the first round because it's a crapshoot in many ways. So they'd sit around and say, okay, well, you'll sign for 1.5 million. I'd say 500,000. I could apply that to somebody else. That goes on a lot, especially unless you have a strong conviction of these are the guys I like, and they have the. But another reason they're going to go to the model and probably go college is for what you were saying earlier about the risk on investment. It's like you could sit around. Now, if you're a good scout, I mean, I always like the high school guys. The Marlins' best picks have been high school guys. Stanton, Yelich, Jose
Yelich.
Fernandez, Josh Beckett, JT Realmuto. They're all high school guys. Josh Johnson, and I was the only one, and people know the receipts are out there in 2018-ish or whatever when I was saying Riley Green or C.J. Abrams, but everyone got swept away, and Jeter did too, about J.J. Bleday because he had 5 hits against Auburn in an SEC playoff game. That's all they needed to see. But the two high school kids are in the All-Star game this year, and Bleday is struggling. He's having a better year, and good for him, but certainly not the player of that, But they also that's the thing. Where it all went wrong. I mean, I wanted to kind of address this. Was Sherman got the team because of Derek Jeter? It was like that's where it went wrong when Jeter didn't work. Jeter needed to make it work. And that's where, and he has himself to blame. He made a lot of bad moves. But the Derek Jeter brand, the name, was going to attract the Castellanoses, and players could say, "Hey, you know what? They're screwy. They're the Marlins, but it's Derek Jeter. I want to be part of what he's building." But Derek also took Connor Scott over Tristan Casas, and that's another one I was saying, please take him. But then I think it was the year Connor Scott, and they ended up trading for Jordan Groshin, and were bragging about that he was going to be the guy they took if they didn't take Connor Scott.
Yeah.
So twice they messed up. Like they admitted to us they didn't know what they were doing on draft day.
Like they double
How do you not
back
think
down.
How do you not think Tristan Costas? He is right in your backyard. Right. Oh, you
The
can't take a first
Marlins,
baseman.
they love to double back down, to double down on their bad takes, on their bad moves. And
Yeah.
it's historical. Like, I mean, you mentioned, I remember that draft, the Connor Sky. I remember like reading all up about him. I think I was, probably a sophomore in high school at the time. And pro comparisons, could hit 25, 30 home runs, got speed. That didn't happen, Oh,
No, he
Jacob.
was never. No, I didn't hear one good thing about him. And I'm like, Casas, Casas, Casas. And even if you didn't take Casas, they don't want Shane McClanahan. I mean, there was a ton of guys in that
Right.
draft that they could have taken also. But, nope, nope, they had they're locked in on him. And I'm like, why? It's like, but you get, again, it's signability, it's all these other things that come into play. But it's, again, everyone misses. There's certainly players that Stan Meeks, so to me, a Hall of Fame scout there, and he missed a lot. But that's how hard it is. And also keep this on. You're always also at the mercy of what your owner is going to allow you to do.
Yeah.
And I like DJ Svilick, and what I like about DJ is he's stand up. He's a stand up guy. I could talk to him about moves that he made that I didn't agree with, and respectfully tell him why. And he you know did he have some bad drafts? Yeah, but he also had some really good picks. Noble Meyer, really good pick. It's like they ended up using the guys that were some of the guys we're talking about to get players that people wanted. Everyone wanted Jacob Stallings. They used Connor Scott to get him. Kyle Nicholas is in the big leagues at a Ball State. Ball State pitchers aren't necessarily growing on trees. So good for him. He has a share of W's, but ultimately you get measured on your first rounder.
Yeah.
Or first or second round. You need Real Muto, I think, was third. That's close enough to those are it's great to have the AJ Ramoses in this 22nd round and but what made like Stan great is he gets Chris Paddock coming off like in the 10th round, a Texas commit, and coming off like high school. I think might have had surgery even, but to unearth him and legitimate big leaguer. Granted, he's had injuries, but he got there and Chris, a great, if you just look at a draft, great pick. But that's where the Marlins also run into danger is if you're relying on not missing in the draft, good luck. Good luck, because that doesn't work that way. It doesn't work
Yeah,
that way.
it's got to be you draft, and you have to draft well, but you also have to incorporate trades. Who are you
Yep.
at, trading at the deadline for? Like that's the next big thing. I talked on the podcast with Eli Sussman from Fish on First last week about some potential trades. Tanner Scott is going to get dealt. There's no doubt about it at this point. It's just finding the right package because teams want him. He's an elite talent right now out of the bullpen. You got Jazz Chisholm, who Ken Rosenthal, I'm sure you've seen. He's good. He's as good as gone at this point. I don't know. I honestly couldn't tell you if Bendix is going to pull the trigger. I mean, look at the Luzardo thing and how they handled him. I don't know if
Well,
Jazz will be traded.
this is the thing. All teams scout their system. All teams have a scout on their staff
Hmm.
who scouts their system. And you have to honestly scout your system. And trust me, those who scout the system, their top 30 will not look like MLB type pipelines top 30. Everyone tried, everyone does a good job, but you got to really be objective. And the thing is with the MLB, that's why in the day when Mel Kiper, the NFL draft used to be great. He would say, "What, Jeff George? That's terrible. How do you take him? What a joke!" That's when it was fun. Someone had the balls to say that.
Right.
Here, you watch the MLB draft. The next Trout, this guy can't miss, and you're like, "What?" These
They
guys,
say it about every
these
prospect. Like,
and this is a bad draft. There's no one even knows who 1-1 is. There's not the
yeah.
definitive. There's nobody that just there's no Bryce Harper. There's no just there's no Strasburg. I mean, a year to
All
Strasburg
schemes.
and Stanton. Yeah. It's not even that. Or Rushman or Witt or what a draft that was. And then you
Oh
think
yeah.
today, because you had so many in that draft, but it was like that's not here. Now, I will say this: it would be very interesting if the Marlins really go for the number one pick. And I know when you're in a lottery system, you may end up picking 12th, even with 100 losses. What if you keep Skip because he's really good friends with Matt Holliday? And you're like, I tell you, it doesn't look good on paper. There's some quirky stuff. Don't listen to what Joe says on podcasts. We don't suck as bad as he's saying it. What the kid sign?
Right. Right. They get
Maybe
Ethan
it keeps
Holiday.
Skip. Maybe it keeps Skip as a recruiter to get the Holiday kid in. But so that's me. I think of
Can you
everything.
can you
I think of the
imagine?
and the other thing too is maybe look. I have nothing personally against Jazz. I always got along great with him. He's always been very respectful to me. I get him. I also know, the headache he presents. But maybe Skip's like, you want me back? He's got to be out of the clubhouse.
You think that is an actual
I'm not sure Skip said it, but directly as I'm saying,
mhm.
but it could be.
There's a
It could
rift
be.
maybe?
And that's I'm just saying it's like if you're trying to build, first of all, if I'm Jazz, why do I want to be part of a rebuild? I mean,
I'd wanna leave.
he should want to leave. I mean, let's look at it this way. I mean, he should want to leave. He should want to leave. Trevor has value. I know he's 1-9 or whatever, and that's probably why they've kind of messed up with him too, because there have been times I thought they could have moved him, and it would have
Same
been
with
selling
Cabrera.
low. It's the whole selling low, which I don't think you're. I think that's more selling low is more of just an easy cop out that you could say that on Twitter and people who know a little bit about baseball would say, you're just selling low on the guy. A 24-year-old or whatever he was 2 years ago, 25-year-old left-hander at those mid-90s who's got 4 years of control, and I don't know what he has now. There's value there. You're
Yeah.
not selling as low as you think you are. And we could do, like I mentioned, I think last time, you package him. Okay, you
Mhm.
want Trevor and Tanner? I want your number one prospect, your number 5 prospect, your number 8 prospect, and throw in a big league bench player.
Well, that's what I'm hoping they do with Tanner Scott and Jazz. Like, best case scenario as a Marlins fan, if I'm sitting here, we're recording this July 9th, podcast will be out Thursday. But if I'm sitting here July 9th and I'm looking, and we got 3 weeks, give or take, to the deadline, I want the best return possible because I know that the value for Jazz is only going to go down. Because right now he's got what, 2.5 years of control. Everybody's like, "Oh, we should extend him." Okay, it's not gonna happen, let's be honest.
No,
They're
they would
not
have
doing
done it
it.
already. They needed to do
Exactly.
it already.
But you wait till the offseason, his value is going to go down, and the demand right now is there. You have some teams that will be willing to pay a price. for Jazz. The Dodgers, the Mariners. I've seen the Pirates thrown out there. These teams have a lot of prospects. Mariners in particular, Dodgers. Like, and it brings me back to the point when I mentioned, does Peter Bendix have the guts to pull a trade like that, to possibly package a big time trade like this?
Well,
I don't
I'm
know
going to do a
because
name
he
now.
hasn't done anything yet.
He hasn't done it. He hasn't done it.
Right.
The only thing he wanted to do is get rid of Luis Ariz. That's the
Yeah,
one
he
thing we
hated
know he
him.
wanted to do.
Hated him.
He hated him. He didn't. Maybe he said something during the ARB hearing that hurt his feelings.
Well, and also
But getting
look at
Ariz
it.
out of here was the thing he needed to do.
Arias is a stain on the spreadsheet in terms of
Yeah,
advanced analytics. He stands out like a sore thumb. Oh, I
yeah. They
can't
don't.
have that guy here. His value's terrible.
Yeah, it's not. We're all about war, and he's not a war guy right now. But keep
Yeah.
in mind, War had Jonathan VR as a 4-war player, and the Marlins took him a couple of years ago and put him in center field, and I don't think he's been in a big league since. So for all the War love, I mean, it's like it ain't. But that's why track record matters more than anything else. But I'm going to throw a name out there for you that I think could be traded that isn't out there unless Craig Mish threw it out. I didn't read the full story. I wouldn't be shocked if Max Meyer is being shopped.
Wow.
And I tell you why. Why isn't he here? And I heard this real early on when they sent him down. I heard this real early on. This guy clearly had a grievance case against the Marlins because you could say he was hurt. He had Tommy John surgery and we want him in the minors, but they didn't do that. They had injuries, made the opening roster. They openly said he earned his way onto the roster.
Yeah.
They didn't win a freaking game till game 10. I think he won that. And he won like 2 of their first 3 games. But then all of a sudden it's like, what are we doing here? We got guys now coming back. We got his clock going. So I'm not sure. And it's not a grievance being filed by the union does not necessarily make public. My years covering the Marlins, there were grievances filed that no one knew in the media along the way. So
I
why
mean,
isn't he up?
he had to be pissed. Like, first off, like you're talking
Why
about the
wasn't he
third
up? But
overall
why
pick,
isn't he up now? They're bringing everybody in the world up but him, and we're past the Super 2 deadline.
and he was
So
his last start, he was shutting down the Braves, and he was throwing the changeup. You know what I mean? Like everybody was saying, "Oh, his changeup, you have to develop it. You got to develop it." He was throwing it against the Atlanta Braves lineup. Doing pretty good.
now I don't get too.
20
I hear you and everything. I don't get too swept away by April or 1 or 2 starts because
Right.
guys don't. But I hear you. I hear you.
But at this
He
point,
was
he should be up
performing at the big league level
at the time. Yeah. And
at the time.
then I thought this was
So
interesting. Jose Fernandez, he came back 14 months after Tommy John surgery, and he started
yeah,
11 games in the majors
and
for a
got hurt,
9-loss team.
and he got
It
hurt.
was no, this was after Tommy John.
No, he came back and then got hurt and came back and pitched at the end of the season.
Right.
He came back and then in August of that year he got something in his shoulder or something wasn't completely right with him. So they had to shut him down. It is very, very you don't know. The point is you don't know.
It's
And
tricky
the
to
kids
handle
are
pitchers.
yes. So I'm like with Yuri next year, I'm like, that's why kind of knowing if you're going for it or not. It's easy to say it in the say, and I know Dave Hyde used to always write it. No, that's what I like about the Heat. They have no like wasted seasons. It's different with a 14-man or whatever it is NBA roster to a 26, 25 at the time, 26-man MLB roster. It's very different because you need that, then you need a lot more to really go for it. So you got to ask yourself, are we going to get everyone back and then spend to fill some holes? Or, are we going to look at 26 as the year to try to track towards closer to 500? And again, we're just talking because players ultimately decide that.
Mhm.
we could all day long say rebuild. Year one's this, two, and then year five we're hoisting a World Series trophy. Doesn't work that way. You could
No.
also have 20 straight losing seasons. So, um, but again, that's to me like Max Meyer. Like, why is he not here? And if he's not, and he's not happy with the system, the organization, um, he could be a very interesting potential trade piece because you could say next year we'll have Dax Fulton back and we'll have whatever you can play whatever someone coming back from an injury or so and so from the international roster is stepping up. You could play all sorts of things with so again if you want to maximize everything you're doing, you know uh, maybe Max Meyer is someone to keep an eye on.
It's almost like he's a forgotten player at this point because
No one asks about him, or
no
if
one
they
asks
do,
about him.
if they do, they're have to be quiet until we feed you the tweet so you could look smart.
Well, and I mean, look at what he's doing in the minors right now. He's pitching 3, 4 innings, like max.
Yeah,
I think his last start was 4 2/3. Like that's to me at least. I mean, that's not how you should be developing your third overall pick from 4 years ago. But that's just me.
yeah.
I
It's
mean,
like something's going on. Something's going
yeah,
on because they
it's
got guys I
weird.
never heard of that are coming up and pitching, and
Right. Like
so
something
and
is
then
off with that situation for sure. I don't
which
know.
could he be traded again if there's a grievance filed, then they're not real happy with him. So that's kind of again you try not to make things personal, but and I'm not saying there is, but there I'm sure his camp can't be real happy with how everything was handled.
Yeah, well, man, it's gonna be an exciting 3 weeks. I guess, kind of,
Yeah.
like, we'll see what happens because at this point in for the Marlins season, there's nothing else to do it but just kinda wait, watch development and wait for the deadline and hope that Bendix and company makes the right decisions. Don't look at the spreadsheet too hard, and see what happens. But, before
Well,
we get
yeah,
out
I
of here,
think what
Joe,
yeah.
I was just gonna say anything, you wanted to say before we wrap it up?
No, I just was going to finally say with Tanner. I mean, he's a free agent, so you take that right
Yeah.
down to a deadline day, and you got one bidder. If other people are like, I ain't paying an overpay for him, and then no one's going to sit around and say, oh, well, you can sign an extension because a lot of these teams they'll sit around, they'll get another reliever on the market if they're not going to give up their number one. So he's got to thread that needle to make sure he gets a deal. Because otherwise, he can't go. We can have him close it for you in September. I mean, you can't. It's like. So that's why I kind of like move sooner than later, especially with that. Because if you had moved him, in June, then the team that's acquiring would have had 100 or so games to use him, more than 70 games or 75 games, whatever that will be after the deadline, or 2 months, 60 games.
The
Yeah.
timing is huge with these trades too. I mean, look at the Arias trade, but they couldn't get anything better than Dylan Head, so
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll find out what happens. And then of course, Luzardo I mentioned early in the podcast. I wanted to touch on him before we wrap it up. It was atrocious how they handled him from start to finish. If you go back to the offseason, Bendix comes in and new front office, he's getting all these guys to help him, player development. You're starting a new regime.
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure, exactly. Luzardo, they knew they weren't going to extend him. They knew they were going to trade him at some point. You reject an offer supposedly for Joey Ortiz. Imagine him on this team right now, your third baseman of the future. And then you pitch him while he's hurt. Like I remember listening to that game, dude's throwing 90 miles an hour, 89-mile-an-hour fastballs. And you didn't pull him, and boom, 60-day IL, not going to trade him, value decreased. Terrible mismanagement.
Correct. And you send a message to the clubhouse that everyone's tradable. My opening day starter is on the trade
Right.
block before spring training starts. So again, there's a lot we can rehash on that. But again, I feel I offer some constructive today, so people can't say I just bash them. But on the draft, take Manny Moran at some point, and I'd be happier. The shortstop from Westminster, Christian from down here in Miami. So um, he's a guy I like to see them take, but they probably won't. He's a high school guy, and whatever the model says is going to be what they do.
I'm hoping for Christian Moore for Tennessee. I think
Go
he's the
Vols.
go Vols, I guess, national champs. So that was State of the Marlins Part 3, guys. Thank you all for listening. And Joe, thank you again. I'm sure you will be back at the podcast for another edition of the series we got going on.
Sure, as long as you'll have me. Thanks,
Yeah.
Jeremiah. Thanks, everyone,
All
for
right.
tuning in.
Let's go fish.